The wind rattled the old windows of the tiny bookstore on the edge of a quiet coastal town. Elena Ramirez stood behind the counter, arranging a stack of worn paperbacks, her fingers moving slowly, carefully, as if each book might bruise. She paused, catching her reflection in the dark glass of a framed poem on the wall. The burns that covered the right side of her neck and shoulder, fading down her arm like a map of fire, stared back at her. 8 years had passed since the night her family's house burned down, taking her parents and her little brother with it. 8 years since she woke up in a hospital bed, wrapped in bandages, alone. She whispered to herself, "It's all right, you're still here." Most days she believed it. The bell above the door chimed softly as the last customer left. Elena locked up, turned off the lights, and walked the 3 blocks to her small apartment above the bakery. People in town were kind enough. They nodded, they smiled, they bought books, but they never quite met her eyes for long. She had grown used to it. Love, marriage, someone to come home to, those belonged to other people, to women whose skin told softer stories. One rainy afternoon, the phone rang in the empty store. "Whispering Pages, this is Elena." A calm, professional voice answered. "Good afternoon. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Alexander Brandt. He's hosting a private gathering next weekend and needs someone to recommend and curate a small library of books for the evening. We were told you have an extraordinary gift for choosing stories that touch the heart." Elena's breath caught. Alexander Grant. Everyone knew the name. The reclusive software pioneer who had sold his company for hundreds of millions of dollars and then disappeared from public life after his wife died in a sailing accident 5 years earlier. He lived in the glass and timber house on the cliff, rarely seen, rarely spoken to. Yes, I'd be happy to help," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "What kind of gathering is it?" "Very small. Intimate. Mr. Grant simply wants the right books present, ones that feel like old friends." They arranged for her to visit the house the following Saturday. When the day came, Elena stood at the gates of the cliffside home, clutching a canvas bag filled with carefully chosen volumes. She had dressed simply, a soft sweater that covered most of her scars, her dark hair pulled forward on the right side, out of habit. The wind off the ocean carried salt and pine. The gate opened silently. She walked the winding path to the front door, where Alexander Grant himself waited. He was taller than she expected, with quiet gray eyes and hair touched with early silver. There was a deep tiredness in his face, as though sleep had become a stranger. "Miss Ramirez," he said, offering a gentle handshake. His gaze met hers without hesitation, without the flicker most people couldn't hide. "Thank you for coming. Please call me Elena." He led inside. The house was warm wood and wide windows, filled with light even on a gray day. Bookshelves lined the walls, half empty, waiting. Alexander explained that there was no gathering, really. He had needed an excuse to bring her here. He had visited her bookstore months ago, late one evening, wearing a cap pulled low. He had watched her recommend a grief memoir to a tearful customer, heard the gentle way she spoke of healing, of carrying loss without letting it carry you away. "I've been lost," he said quietly, standing by the window, watching the waves crash far below. Elena set her bag down, unsure what to say. "I saw your bookstore," he continued. "I saw the way you listen to people, the way you choose stories that help them feel less alone. I thought, maybe you could help me remember to feel again, how to see the world the way you seem to." She shook her head softly. "I'm not a teacher, Mr. Grant. I'm just someone who loves books." "Alexander," he corrected, "and maybe that's enough. All I'm asking is time. Let me pay you for your hours. Come when you can. Bring books. Talk to me about them. Help me find my way back to living." There was such quiet desperation in his voice that Elena felt her heart ache. She knew loneliness. She knew the way it wrapped around you like smoke. "One visit," she said. "We'll see how it goes." He smiled then, small, hopeful, real. Over the next few weeks, Elena returned to the cliff house several times. They sat by the fire or walked the winding paths above the sea. She brought poetry about grief, novels about second chances, memoirs of people who had rebuilt after unimaginable loss. They read passages aloud. Sometimes they sat in silence, listening to the ocean. One afternoon, Alexander asked her to read to him while he cooked a simple soup. She hesitated, then began. Her voice was soft, steady. When she finished the chapter, he looked up from the stove. "You read like someone who understands every word." "I've lived some of them," she said quietly. He nodded, not pressing. Slowly, gently, they began to share pieces of their stories. He spoke of Caroline, how sudden her death was, how guilt still followed him like a shadow. Elena spoke of the fire, of waking to sirens and smoke, of learning days later that her family hadn't made it out. She spoke of the long recovery, the skin grafts, the way the mirror became an enemy. Alexander listened without pity, only presence. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, he asked, "Do you ever feel unfixable?" "Every day," she admitted. "I look at my scars and think, this is why I'm alone. This is why no one will ever choose me." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, very softly, "I look at you and see someone who survived something that would have ended most people. I see courage I'm not sure I have." She looked at him, surprised. He continued, "Your scars don't hide you, Elena. They reveal you. The strength it took to keep going. The kindness you still offer the world after it took so much from you. That's what I see." Tears rose before she could stop them. No one had ever spoken to her like that. As the weeks turned into months, something tender grew between them. Walks became longer. Silences became comfortable. One night, after reading a poem about love that arrives quietly, like tide, Alexander reached across the table and took her hand. "I know I'm still healing," he said. "I know you are too. But I also know I don't want to do it without you. You've brought light back into this house, into me." Elena's heart trembled. "I'm afraid," she whispered, "of hoping, of believing someone could want all of this." She touched her neck, her shoulder. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her fingers gently. "I want all of you," he said, "the quiet strength, the gentle voice, the heart that still chooses kindness after everything. You are everything I've been searching for." They didn't rush. They moved slowly, carefully, like people learning to trust sunlight after years in shadow. But the world outside was not always gentle. When photos of them walking together appeared online, grainy shots taken from a distance, the headlines were cruel. "Reclusive millionaire's new companion, from tragedy to charity case?" Articles compared her to Caroline, beautiful, untouched, gone too soon. Comment sections overflowed with judgment. Elena read only one before closing her laptop. She sat in her apartment, tears falling silently. Alexander arrived an hour later, rain still clinging to his coat. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have warned you. I should have protected you better." She shook her head. "It's not your fault. It's just the truth I've always known, that people look at me and see damage." He knelt in front of her, taking both her hands. "Then let me tell you what I see," he said, voice steady. I see the woman who stayed open when the world gave her every reason to close. I see the woman who helped me find my way back to life. I see the woman I love, and I'm not going anywhere." He stood, offering his hand. "Come with me." They drove north along the coast until the road narrowed and the houses disappeared. He parked near an old lighthouse being restored, a project he had quietly funded. Inside, the walls were freshly painted, windows gleaming. On a table lay blueprints and photos of children who would soon come here, foster kids, burn survivors, young people carrying heavy stories. "I want to turn this into a place," he said, "where they can heal, where they can read, create, feel safe, where someone believes in them the way you believed in me." He turned to her. "I want you to help me build it, not as an employee, as my partner, in this, in everything." Elena looked around the sunlit space, then back at him. "You'd trust me with this?" "I trust you with my heart," he said simply. "The rest is easy." Years later, the lighthouse stood bright against the sea, filled with laughter and stories. Children came for weekends, for summers, as long as they needed. They painted, wrote, photographed the waves. They learned that their scars, visible or hidden, did not define their worth. Elena led the storytelling workshops, her voice calm and kind, her presence a quiet promise. You are not alone. Alexander was often beside her, carrying books, fixing shelves, listening to teenagers read their poems aloud. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped into the ocean, they stood on the lighthouse balcony. Their daughter, Marina, named for the sea that had taken so much and given so much back, slept in a carrier against Elena's chest. Alexander wrapped his arms around them both. "Do you remember," he asked softly, "when I first asked you to help me see again?" She smiled. "I remember thinking you were the bravest man I'd ever met, asking for help when you had everything the world says matters. And you were the strongest, letting someone close when the world had taught you to expect distance." She leaned into him, watching the horizon glow. Sometimes the greatest love doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives gently, like tide, washing away years of doubt. It looks at your deepest wounds and says, not, "I wish these weren't here," but, "I'm grateful you survived them. They brought me to you." And in that quiet seeing, healing begins, not just for one heart, but for two. And then, if you let it, for many more. Share this story if it reminded you that true beauty is never on the surface, and that the right person will always see the light you carry inside.